my friends. Welcome back to Jump Podcast. I am Traveling Jackie, and if you haven't ever listened to this podcast before, cool, welcome. Love to have you. Thanks for listening. If you have listened before, you might have noticed a bit of a gap between episodes this past year. And yes, I've been making some moves behind the scenes, and I'm working on a new listening experience for you that you're going to be hearing more about in the coming months. So yeah, it's nice to be back with an episode about off the beaten path adventures in Japan. That audio clip that you heard at the beginning was a recording that I actually took from a geisha performance during my first ryokan experience in Japan. I was there last year for an adventure travel conference, and we got to spend our first multi-course dinner with these geishas, which was quite special and nothing like I would have imagined. But that's for you to go to Japan and see for yourself what geishas are really like and what I'm talking about. Our guest today is none other than Sherry Ott from Ott's World, who is about to knock it out of the park again for you all. She's been to Japan a few times and collectively has spent months there and has a lot of insight into off the beaten path adventure all over the country. So we're going to get to hear about the Michinoku Coastal Trail in the Tohoku region, the Tokachi District of Hokkaido, and Shikoku Island's 88 Temples Pilgrimage Trail and Iya Valley. And along the way, we're going to hear about why Japan is so different from the rest of Asia and so different from the rest of the world, solo traveler safety in Japan, the Ainu indigenous culture, and we're going to get an introduction to disaster tourism and find out many of the reasons that Sherry says Japan is a country that makes you think. So grab a tea or maybe some sake, depending on what time of day it is and what your mood is where you are. And here we go with Sherry. We're so grateful to Osprey Packs for partnering with us and supporting the podcast, so please stay tuned for more about them later on. I have an opportunity for you to join me in real life for some real travel. Here's the latest Jump Adventures update. We are going to Greece for a bike and boat island hopping adventure this May 9th to 16th, 2025, and we still have space left. Check out jumpadventures.com to learn more and book now. We're going to have a yacht all to ourselves with ensuite cabins on board, so you get to sleep in the same bed every night as we start in Athens and make our way west toward the island of Corfu. You'll have your own bike for the week, e-bike if you want one, for cycling the islands as we go, in between meals crafted by our private chef on board, and all the relaxing you want to do on the top deck under the Mediterranean sun. These bike and boat adventures are our most carefree and relaxed trips. All you have to do is say yes and show up, and there's still space. Head over to jumpadventures.com to grab your spot now, and we'll see you there. I should probably begin with a thank you to Sherry again for joining us, because if you guys have been listeners of this podcast for a while, then Sherry won't be new to you. In fact, I think you hold the record, and now you're breaking your own record of how many times you did a guest on this show, which is wonderful. And you've even hosted one before. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so this time, we're coming together to share a somewhat of a shared experience, although we did some different things. So welcome back to the show. And what do you want to take a couple minutes to just introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know you, and tell us what you do and what you're doing here?
What I do is always evolving, it seems like.
Hardest question.
Yeah, exactly. But I am a travel blogger. That's how I started in this industry. And I started back in 2006, so a long, long time ago. And things were very different in blogging then. So I've stuck with it, though, and saw a lot of changes as it turned into an actual profession, which was really weird. And during that time, I was also nomadic and lived for 11 years out of my suitcase with a storage unit in New York City, and traveled all over, wrote about it in my blog, Ott's World. So then also during all that time, social media came around and I got really involved in that. And so I do a lot of social media stuff now too. I have recently evolved into a couple of more new things as blogging continues to evolve, which is reader tours, which is obviously, Jackie, you're very familiar with that. So I offer tours to some of my favorite places, outdoor adventure, active, and only about like 3 or 4 a year at this point. And I've also started to do some travel consulting and design. So helping people figure out where to go. So like if you say, I want to go to Japan, but I don't know what to do, stuff like that. So I can help people with that type of stuff too. So that is what I do. And I'm also a very avid biker. I have a bike project that I've been working on where I'm biking from capital to capital, doing about 3 or 4 of those a year. So, and hopefully Jackie will join me on one soon.
I am still like, not only can I not wait to do that with you, but then we're going to get back on here and talk about it because that's such an interesting project. So if you guys aren't following Sherry yet, where can they find you?
Ottsworld, ottsworld.com. And then on all the social media, it's just Ottsworld, OTTS World.
Yeah. OTTS World, Ottsworld. Thank you for that. That was, because we can't just wear one hat, can we?
Oh, God.
Okay. So Japan. They say, they being like everybody, the royal they say that you have to go to Japan. Like everyone says that. That's what I heard. That's what I always hear from people is you have to go to Japan. I don't know very many people who don't have it on their list because it's so talked about. And when people go there, they somehow drink the Kool-Aid and they're just falling in love with Japan. Like there's this thing about Japan. And so that's one of the reasons I was highly intrigued to go. And I'm wondering because you've been 3 times now. So did you have any did you have an expectation about Japan beforehand? Kind of like I did, that what is it that everybody's talking about that's so amazing, that makes them fall in love? Like, do you think that that's true? And then how did that go for you? How is that for you?
Yeah. I think there are things about Japan that make it very easy to like as a traveler, which we'll get into, I think. But if I look back at my first trip to Japan, which would have been in 2007, I went with I had certain expectations and it wasn't anything like that. And that's because I had spent a lot of time in Asia at that point, and I felt like I knew Asia pretty well, even though obviously all the countries have little nuances about their culture and so on. And so when I got to Japan, I was expecting more, typical stuff that I'm used to in Asia. And then it was nothing like Asia. And I'm just like, what is this weird world? Like, I don't even understand it. I can't put it in Asia from a cultural perspective. It's just so different. Yeah, that was really surprising to me. So if you're someone that spent time in Asia before, Southeast Asia, even China, it is very different. And it's one of my best descriptions of how it's different is everyone there follows the rules. Everyone. Like when you go on these huge metros, the subways or whatever, people actually like get in little lanes and they let people out first, or, it's just like that kind of stuff is absolutely unbelievable to me. Because if you spent time in, say, China or any other place on public transportation in Asia, that it's just a free for all shit show. So it's just so different, and it's so clean and proper. It's like this weird utopia, which is why I'm intrigued with it. I guess, because it's it holds the largest cities in the world, some of them, and how it can do that and still balance out and be this like perfect, clean place that's safe and all that is super intriguing to me. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm always interested in, like cultures that make you think. And so for me, Japan is a culture that absolutely makes you think. Every day I was just like, what? Why?
That is such a good way to put it, actually. I've never heard you say it that way. I've never heard anybody say it that way. But like a culture that makes you think. Because it's so unlike anything. That I agree. And when I first got there, I actually thought it kind of reminded me of North America because it was clean. Like we have standards. They have standards.
Their standards are even higher than ours.
Yeah. Different. But, yeah. Okay. So I might just let you kind of take this because Is there a way to travel through Japan that would make sense on a map?
Boy, I don't know. I think, well, one of the things I think that we could sit and talk about Tokyo. That would be easy. But I think one of the things that both you and I are really interested in and enjoyed about Japan is that we both got really off the beaten track. And I know that's very cliche, but really we did. And so my goal, and it's funny because Japanese Tourism Board has also really taken this on as a goal to try to get people out of Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto and into these less visited areas. And that's my goal in any kind of travel, and to inspire people to do that. So I think it's probably best to focus on some of those areas.
Yeah, definitely.
Because
I don't think anyone's heard of the place I went to. Shizuoka province. It's right there in the middle, but we went to this big peninsula that no one goes to. It was so beautiful. This ryokan that we went to, we biked, rice paddies, but nobody talks about that. Yes, we did end up going to Fuji as well, but that's what everybody knows is Mount Fuji. And I think they know spring blossoms in Kyoto. Yes. You might know the Kumano Kodo. They know, especially if they've listened to this podcast before. And they might know Hokkaido for skiing powder. Japanuary.
Yeah. So let's take people off those tracks. And because the other great thing about Japan, as we both know, is it's one of these countries that it's so easy to get around. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, put aside the fact that there's millions of people and some of the things are confusing, that's fine. But the transportation will take you everywhere. So all of these places, even though they're not really touristed much by international tourists, you can easily get to them. And that's really also rare, when you go to these places that haven't been touched as much. Yeah, very fast too. Fast trains.
Very fast. Whoa, fast. This is real when you're videoing it fast.
I know. Right. So I can first take you north out of Tokyo to Tohoku. Tohoku is a very large province. And it's basically I hopped on a fast train, and in, 2 hours, I was in kind of the south part of Tohoku. Now, most people have never heard of it. Except you probably heard of it and you didn't know it was Tohoku, because it is back on March 11th, 2011, so 3/11. It is where the big tsunami hit, and because it's basically the northeast part of Japan, and the whole part of it is coastline too. There's over 1,000 miles of coastline that belong to Tohoku. Anyway, it was the earthquake that struck shortly or a little bit offshore and brought in this huge tsunami wave up to 130 feet high. That's just insane. I mean, it's a 10-story building or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it's 130 feet high, and it went as far as 6 miles inland. And I think they say around 20,000 people perished in that region. And it was this huge swath of land, right? It was the whole coast. So that sets the scene. So that's Tohoku. You probably heard of the Fukushima nuclear plant that also had a meltdown, an emergency during that time. Anyway, so that is kind of the premise of this trip that I took, was the tsunami. So that area has spent a decade rebuilding towns, moving towns, making things safer, changing their warning systems, all this stuff, building memorials all the way up the coast. And then the really unusual thing they did was they also looked at tourism to help rebuild, which I thought was kind of cool. And they basically created a 1,000 kilometer coastal trail. Long coastal trail. It's the longest now. So it's now considered the longest coastal trail the longest trail, I think, in Japan. It opened in 2019, technically, and they put a lot of money into it. Like there's visitor centers, there's all kinds of stuff. So I was up there to go check out this coastal trail because I love to do long distance hikes. Granted, I couldn't do the whole thing. It would have taken over a month to do. So I was up there kind of as part of a press trip. And we did kind of the best sections for 7 days and worked our way from the south down where Fukushima was up to the north where it ends at a temple. And it was absolutely fascinating. So it was kind of like, have you heard of disaster tourism?
I hadn't before this, actually. Oh, yeah. And I find it super fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, if you went to New Orleans, and did tours on the hurricane affected areas there, or even, I suppose you could even call Pearl Harbor in a way, what's bringing you there was something that was really bad that happened, basically.
Mm-hmm. But then your dollars are going into that community.
Exactly.
And rebuilding.
Exactly. And this is, there's a lot of good and bad, I think, with disaster tourism. Depends on how it's done. And so that's why I was really curious about this. But I think it's been over a decade. And so it's not that you're going in there and you're not in the way. You are actually helping. And they really do want to bring tourism back, or they want to bring tourism into that area to help continue to rebuild that area. It's really commendable what they're doing there. And the hiking I did hiking and biking and kayaking all along that coastal trail, and it was awesome. So just a fabulous experience. You met all these locals. You heard all of their stories about what happened to their family, and how they deal with it and so on and so forth. It was really fascinating.
So can you do organized trips? Like there are operators that do organized trips there, and then you can also do it self-guided, right? Probably.
Yes. So, yeah. So, the company I went with specializes in, they're not going to do the whole thing, but once again, they'll take some of the best sections. So how many days do you have? And they'll help you figure out here's the things you can do. Maybe you like to bike, whatever. And then there's also companies like Oku Japan, who we're going to talk about a few times probably here, they just started a self-guided version of that trail, for a week. Okay. Once again, maybe not the whole thing. The whole thing you're probably going to do independently, which would be challenging, I'm going to say. Only because the one thing I did note is for a long distance trail, the markings were not that great. And so they're still working on some GPS files and that kind of stuff. They have a really detailed book with maps, but they still have a little ways to go on the trail markings. But but there are people that do it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was like a day, what did a day look like on that particular trip? Like what did you see, and pick your favorite day? Like what did that look like?
There were so many favorite days. I'm going to give you one that was really varied. We started the day at a town where it was one of the worst hit towns. And we went to a memorial that had been built after the fact, obviously. And it was a beautiful memorial. They had all kinds of stuff. We had a guided tour. We learned more about it. We learned the term Tendenko. Tendenko is what they're trying to teach everyone in that region about tsunami safety, which is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first, get to high ground, and, worry about others later, which is really interesting because that is the exact opposite of everything in Japan. So it's a very hard thing to teach people. And because of that, though, because their culture is so strong in you follow the leader, you follow the elder, whatever, that's why a lot of people perished in the tsunami. So anyway, we started at the memorial. It was really cool. Walked around that. Then we got on bikes and we started biking around the city. And this is a city that in order to rebuild it, they had to take everything and move it to higher ground. So that was interesting. But they kept a bunch of the old buildings intact, like an old apartment building that we rode by and stopped and learned about. And they left it as it was. So you could see refrigerators that were hanging out of balconies and everything torn apart, and mattresses, and it was crazy.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. So that was pretty weird. And then,
Yeah.
and so there were a few things like that. And then we biked out to the coast. That was absolutely stunning. Like it is a stunning part of the coast. Biked through rice fields, out to the coast. We stopped at a little local, very tiny little town. I don't even know if I'd call it a town, maybe a neighborhood. And had lunch with some local ladies some older women that cooked all the food and had us for lunch. And that area was used as kind of a emergency area for people to go during this, after the tsunami. So, they talked about that a little bit. But at the same time, we also talked about seaweed farming, so it wasn't, don't get me wrong, it wasn't just like all doom and gloom at all. In fact, it was a really interesting balance, actually. Anyway, and then we went to like a temple that day and so on and continued biking. That was one of my favorite days. My other favorite day was probably the hiking day where it was the hardest hike for sure that we did. And I think it's called I even wrote it down, Kitty Yamazaki Cliffs. And they call it the Alps of the ocean. So the hike was actually pretty hard because it was just like up and down. The cliffs are, I think, 200 feet high. So they were a natural barrier to the tsunami. And it was all woods and, it was great. We had a guide that led us through the woods. It was really challenging. It was beautiful, but it was very natural. We also did a section along the coast that day that you had to go through all these caves, which was really cool because you'd go through a cave and then you'd pop out into this like little cove that no one could get to unless you went through that cave. It was so cool. And then you'd climb over all these rocks and go into another cave and pop out into another cove. So it was really stunning, like that coastal. And, I know our guide told us that this was the only part of Japan that had these types of coastal cliffs. It reminded me a lot of like the Pacific coast, like Oregon,
Goonies.
Yeah.
Astoria. Yeah. That's what I was picturing.
Yeah. So it was really super, and in that area, there's potentially bears. Like even when we hiked, do you have that where you hiked? The worry of bears?
No.
Okay.
I'm smiling because we saw a tanuki statue. Like that? Tanuki from Mario. But there was, it kind of looked like a panda bear in the bushes. Oh my God. It was a statue.
I love it.
Okay. I totally digress.
I would say, and I think you probably had this experience too, is that, what I love about doing adventure travel in Japan is, first of all, there's a lot of adventurous stuff to do. A lot. Like more than you can ever imagine. Just get out of the big cities. And you do that and you kind of play hard all day. And then you come into these ryokans, which are these traditional hotels, and you sit down to have a meal. And it is absolutely amazing. That is if you like Asian food and you like to be adventurous. But
it's not the same as Asian food, though. It's Japanese food.
It's a little different. You're right. But, ramen is kind of similar to all the other
ramen is so
noodly
good.
soup. But you sit down to these extravagant dinners called kaiseki that they serve in the ryokans. And, lots of times you sit down and you've got like literally 20 different little cups, kind of like what you're drinking out of, right? Or 20 different little things with food that you have no idea what it is. And to me, that's part of the adventure.
Yeah.
Like I like adventurous eating too, I guess, but it's fun. So it's just like a full day of like all this fun adventure and newness and really a lot of culture.
That was great. I liked being able to visualize that. And I did watch your story that day of the cliff scrambling and the caves and then the coasts. That was really cool. But we were just in the last pod chat we did, we talked about alternative tourism and the way that you can celebrate where you are, meaning the locals. Celebrate where you are, what it is that you have to offer. And I love that disaster tourism is one of these alternative tourism ideas because you're still celebrating your own history. You're owning it. You're literally just owning it, putting it out there, sharing it with the world and saying, hey, come visit us. This is what we have to share. I mean, on top of their gorgeous landscapes and coastline. And they're building a trail to bring tourism. Like, that's so brilliant to me.
Yeah, it is. And it's very natural. It's not, it's trail. It's good for you. Be outside, and as we know, like the Japanese are huge proponents of the intermingling of, nature and life, and probably more so than many other countries I've ever been in. And so nature is really, really important to them. So I think, my final take on that trip was that it was like nature is the destroyer and the healer, which was really interesting to me. It gave you a lot to think about. And the other thing is when we stopped and we met the director of like the trail, basically, one of the things she said to us was that this is also weirdly a way for the locals to heal, not just economically, and we met a ton of locals, which you're probably going to do more if you're with a group, I would say, but that's with a guide that can translate. But we met a ton of locals, and she said that lots of times the locals don't talk to each other about the disaster and what happened and how they felt about it, but they feel okay talking to guests and strangers about it. So by talking about it, it just helps them heal too, which I thought was really kind of cool.
It's like win, 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 win.
Yeah.
So good. I love that. Yeah. Okay. Tohoku.
Yeah, so Tohoku, and the trail is called the Michinoku Coastal Trail. And you'll probably be hearing a lot more about it because like I said, it opened in 2019, then we had the pandemic. And so it's just starting to get into the international press. But man, it's such a cool area.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. And so that was like my pre-conference adventure. Where did you go on your pre-conference adventure?
Oh, I was on the Izu Peninsula, which you've never heard of,
No.
but it's south of Tokyo. And it was like a 2-hour bullet train to get there. And we did we did a coastal bike as well. We spent, I think, 3 days biking, and we did some hiking, and we ultimately went to Mount Fuji because we were in the Shizuoka prefecture the whole time, which includes this peninsula. And then it also includes Mount Fuji. And I'm going to share this because I wasn't going to talk about Mount Fuji very much, but I didn't actually know. I did not know before that you could hike Mount Fuji. I did not know that. So I would imagine that a lot of people don't know that. You can hike Mount Fuji. First of all, you can climb it. It's a hike.
What's the altitude?
4,500 feet. Where we started, our elevation gain was 4,500 feet in 4 miles. So it's like very, very steep. The altitude of the top ended up being something over 10 and below 12, I think.
I think
oh my gosh.
Right. It's not as high as like the stuff we have in Colorado. I know that.
No, because some people dealt with altitude stuff, but I didn't really, which makes me think it was somewhere around 12 because like that's right where
I think you're right.
Yeah, I need to get clear on that number. I forgot. I wasn't even going to talk about Mount Fuji, but I will say this. I did not know, first of all, that you could hike it, but I didn't know that the rest of the world did know that. Like apparently a lot of people do hike it, and it is battling over tourism. Yeah. And so I would say, and honestly, it was awesome. I loved it. It was arduous. It was grueling. I mean, we did it in one day. It was an out and back of about 10 miles because we did 4 miles straight up and we did 1 mile around the crater and then the 4 miles straight down. We were all pretty sore the next day. We had brilliant sock line sunburns too, our entire group, because you're a lot closer to the sun up there, No, but we actually were thwarted. Our plan was to hike up, stay in a hut, and then finish summit at sunrise, which is a thing. But there was a
monsoon, wasn't there?
No, what's the word? It's the Asian version of a hurricane. I learned that a typhoon. There was a typhoon. Yeah, which is the exact same thing. In different places in the world, they call it different things. And we call them hurricanes in the West. They call them typhoons. Anyway, there was a typhoon and it was very wet and it thwarted our plans. They evacuated the whole mountain. And so that's why we did it in and up and back in one day. We did take the southern route, which is it's a mountain, right? There's trails on like all sides of it. We took a trail it was called the Fujinomiya Trail, because there's a town called Fujinomiya down like kind of southwestish of Mount Fuji. And so it starts on that side. We took a shuttle all the way up. It's very regimented. So you have to take a shuttle at certain times there's certain dates that you can do it. You're not allowed to drive up to the trailhead. So we did this whole thing on the southern side. Most people approach it apparently from the north because it's easier to get to from Tokyo. And so I'm not actually clear on how the rules go for hiking on any of the other trails other than the Fujinomiya Trail. But yeah, I didn't know that they were dealing even with over tourism. And that's why you need to take the shuttles and stay on the trails and only so many people can sleep in the huts, etc. So it was incredibly beautiful though. Getting up there, it was socked in and rainy on the bottom and it's like up until we got to our trailhead and then we just hiked right out of it and we had the most gorgeous day. And I love those kind of hikes. Like summiting mountains is pretty cool. Summiting mountains that you don't have to like ice climb and mountaineer, but like hiking, like it was really, really rad. And I did love that. It was absolutely the highlight of my trip. So
that's cool.
That was what we did before. But apparently that's really popular. And so I'd rather keep going on I didn't even know. I was like, I can hike Mount Fuji? Like, sure, I want to do this. Like, no idea, but
yeah, that is good though. It looked like a lot of fun. That's for sure.
It was a lot of fun, and there are ways to do it right for sure. So we'll come right back to that. Let's take a moment now to thank our wonderful show sponsors. Osprey is the market leader in technical outdoor, travel, and everyday packs. And I've personally used Osprey packs since 2015. My favorites are the Fairview Trek 50 for multi-day hikes, the Cirrus 24 for day hikes, the Transporter Rolling Duffel 60, which is my trusty check luggage for faraway adventures, and of course, the countless packing cubes I use to organize everything that goes in them. We are proud to support each other on the podcast and beyond. We love getting outside, and we want to see more people outdoors. So find out more and join us at osprey.com. And it's actually a pilgrimage from the side that we were on. And so
there's so many. I don't think people really understand how much hiking and like pilgrimage, like longer distance hiking and all that is in Japan. There's a ton. It's really surprising and impressive. And it's not easy necessarily. Like it's not a walk in the park. Every hike I've done there has always been like, oh, this is way harder than I was expecting.
What else have you done? You've done the Kumano-Kodo.
Yes.
Kumano-Kodo.
Yeah. The Kumano-Kodo is a pilgrimage that took me, that was shorter, about 5 days on the Kii Peninsula, which is near Osaka. I can't remember the name of the prefecture though. But very wooded, very hilly, up and down. There are so many trees. I think I actually just read something recently that said only 30% of Japan is habitable. Like all mountains. It's mountains and trees and wild landscapes. And isn't that interesting? Which is also kind of why everyone goes into these big cities, but still
right.
Yeah.
And they build them tall.
Yeah.
On the note of trees, I loved this. This was such a fun fact that I learned on my first day. They have a redwood there, like a version of that's their most common tree is part of the redwood family. It's like a redwood. Yeah. Which is apparently in the, is it the cypress family? I think. But I got there and there's a one of those little signs at the bottom of a tree. We were in this nature park thing, which was stupid beautiful. Oh my goodness. We did this river walk with like stones in the middle of the river. It was so amazing. Anyway, the trees, I couldn't get over the trees. And it turns out they were redwoods. I mean, Star Wars, anyone? Like, it reminded me, I was like, where am I right now? This is so cool. And it turns out that's like the most popular tree in Japan. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. The trees there are amazing. I will say it's just like hills and hills and hills of trees. And so the Kumano Kodo basically cuts a path through that. The idea is that you're going to these temples. Like I said, it is a old pilgrimage route. And in fact, if anyone is familiar with the Camino de Santiago, it is considered like a sister trail to the Camino de Santiago. So if you finish the Camino de Santiago and get your Compostela, and you finish the Kumano Kodo, which is only like 5 days or so, and you get your certificate there, then you're considered a dual pilgrim. And I can't remember that gets you. It's not like it gets you, entry into fancy restaurants or anything. It's just you're a dual pilgrim. I don't know.
Oh, flash my dual pilgrim card and get an upgrade to first class on the plane.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Man, I would go do them.
It is really interesting because also I think the Japanese do everything. They don't do anything halfway, right? They like research everything and do everything. And one of the interesting things about talking with the person who was heading up the Michinoku Coastal Trail is she was telling us the research they did. They made people go out and hike the PCT and all this stuff because they wanted to be able to formulate a trail, that trail kind of environment and that setting within Japan. And they're good at it. They're really good at it. So
that's super cool. They did their research. Yeah. Good for them.
Yeah, it was really cool. Anyway, so yeah, the Kumano Kodo, I did that. I did that with Oku Japan. I did that self-guided by myself. Like I was a solo hiker out there. But you hike from village to village. You stay in these villages in these cute little guest houses. And it's beautiful. You just have to go at the right time of the year because I know Carly did it too, and it was really hot when she did it.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah. You just mentioned something that I want to ask you about just real quick before we move on to the next place is you were in groups this time, but I know you've done a bunch of solo travel in Japan. So maybe you could quickly summarize what it feels like and how you feel safety wise for traveling by yourself in Japan.
Man, this is another thing I love about Japan. As a solo traveler, this is probably the easiest place you're ever going to go as a solo traveler. Like the safety there is incredible. Like, and I think you can attest to this too. I think during the conference where we went to up in Hokkaido, there were a number of people who you heard stories of, like someone who left their phone somewhere at a bar or a restaurant or left this or that or
the wad of cash that was found.
Yes.
There was a wad of cash found at our...
And and
it was returned.
And people just return it. Like
just
the safety in Japan, that culture is so by the book. Like they, like I said in the beginning, they follow the rules. And because of that, it's probably the safest place I've ever traveled. And in fact, I always say that Japan makes me lazy as a solo traveler, because I'm like, on the subways with my phone in my pocket or like, I don't care, I walk around dark, like we might get into this later if we have time, but I did all this cocktail bar stuff. And I would just go out in these random towns, small towns or mid-sized towns by myself at night, walking down alleys that I would never, in fact, as I was doing it, I was thinking like, I would never do this. Not even in Denver would I do this. But it's Japan, so it's okay. And, go up to all these like just things by myself and never an issue. Like the safety there is, people will take care of you. People will return things. I mean, yeah, sure. Do bad things happen? Yes, I'm sure. But compared to other places I've ever been, it's
they're
safe.
really low on crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was walking back to the hotel one night pretty late. It was like 1 in the morning. And I remember, I didn't even know what was going on, but I was looking at my phone a lot. Like I was either talking I don't know what I was doing, but I was on the phone. And I remember thinking as I'm walking, like there are people around, my head is down. I would never, I don't normally do this. Usually I'm on alert. It definitely made me lazy. You're just making me realize I also got lazy there, and I felt so safe, even like with no one around. I mean, and there'd be the occasional person passing by. I never had that. I never had that gut feeling of I shouldn't be here.
Yeah.
It never happened. Not once. Not at all.
Yeah.
Which is so nice.
As a solo traveler, it is a fabulous place to be. Like you can go and you can be an independent traveler. You don't have to do the tours and stuff like that. I've done a mix of both, but there are some places that I find it's really hard to be an independent traveler, like China, back when people went to China. Just because it's really challenging for all kinds of reasons. But Japan, it's not. It's really not. It's so easy. So yeah, take trains, train stations, it's just, I love it.
That's nice. It's nice to have a break from that.
Yeah, it is. And then the next place I went was Santiago, Chile, and which is also very nice, but still it's like, oh, that's right. I have to be aware now again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So can you take us to another place? Like maybe we can fit in two more little corners off the beaten Japan.
I'll be quick on the next off the beaten path, because the next one is actually in Hokkaido. Hokkaido is not a city. It is a island. I can't remember if it's the biggest island, the second biggest island.
Yeah, it's the biggest. Besides the main island, it's
and it's far north, which is why it gets snow, and it's known for their snow and their mountains. And they do have beautiful mountains. However, I went to an area of Hokkaido that no one goes to. This was and I wouldn't have known about this except for the fact that this was kind of a press trip put on by the government, trying to once again get people into other areas that aren't as well known. And this was an area called Tokachi. And Tokachi was really cute. So it was also coastal. There was a coastal area to it. It's more on the east side of Hokkaido, far away from Sapporo. Anyway, it is known for a few things. It's mainly known for its agriculture. So imagine you're going to visit the Midwest in a way. So it was flat and there were lots of fields and family farms, and the farming industry was amazing there, which I find really interesting. But then there were great big mountains behind it, kind of thing. So that was really pretty. It reminded me a lot of Eastern Montana, where you got this flat farming area and then big mountains behind it. So it was really pretty. So they're known for their farming. They pretty much supply all of Japan, produce and vegetables and stuff. And they have a really interesting history with the farming, which also means that they have a history with horses. So in Tokachi, they bred a horse that they used hundreds of years ago, obviously before tractors, to till the land. And they bred the strongest horse there is. I don't know, but it's stronger than a Clydesdale. It can pull one horse. Whoa. And this horse is huge. Anyway, so all that was really interesting, I thought. But once again, it wasn't just that we went into the cornfields. We did adventure stuff around that. So we did some hiking, but my favorite thing that we did there was biking. They had a bike company that came out, brought us electric bikes, and we did a bunch of gravel biking, which was really fun, through all of these very agricultural areas. So I really, really love that. Also in this part of Japan, which you're really not going to find anywhere else but in Hokkaido, to my knowledge, is you get a injection of indigenous culture. So most people don't even think about the indigenous culture in Japan, much like all indigenous cultures. It's been kind of swept under the rug. But it has had a resurgence in Hokkaido. They have a presence. That's probably their biggest presence. They're called the Ainu people. So that was really interesting. So we met and we went to all these dances and cultural things with the Ainu, which was really awesome, fun hands-on stuff. We learned how to do different things. It was really cool because that's a side of Japan that not many people ever get to see. So I thought that was really great. Learn about, and there you kind of learn about the good and the bad, right? Because with all indigenous cultures, there's good and bad. Well, with all cultures probably, but I mean, they've had a really hard history there. So that was really interesting. They also, because of the horses, they don't obviously use the horses anymore to till the fields. They are known because they have these races called, I think it's called Banai. Yeah, the Banai horse race in their main city there. Obihiro is the city. And it's the only place in the world that these horse races take place. And to call it a race is kind of a misnomer because it's what they're doing is pulling weight. So it's one horse pulling like a ton. And then they have a course that they go on and it has like some up and down. And it's really amazing. Like I'd never seen anything like it before in my life. So yeah, it's not fast. It's very slow.
Yeah.
It's a slow race. In fact, it's so slow that you, the audience, can go right down like to the fence and run along with them, which is kind of fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really fun.
That's cool.
And like I said, the horses are just huge. So,
wow.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really interesting area. Definitely worth like a couple of days in that region, without a doubt. They have a bunch of really great bike trails there too, where you can, go from area to area. Yeah, I loved it. And it is the home of my favorite bar that I went to, which we can talk about later. We don't need to go later.
Talk about it now.
Well, I was on a mission to find cocktail bars because if you know anything about cocktails, Japan is quite famous because they have really good whiskey. They have good gin, etc. And their cocktail bars are beautiful, like just very regimented. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I found this, what I would do is I'd look up on Google cocktail bar, and then I would just, after dinner, I would go by myself and go find it. And always, it's not like, the cocktail bars are not located in like bars like we know them. They're like up 3 or 4 stories in like what looks like a residential building. There's probably not even any windows. It's a really small little room, but you have to really kind of know what you're looking for. And after a lot of trial and error, I figured all this stuff out, like how to find them and so on.
It's like speakeasies or something. Like they're all speakeasies.
Yeah. And they have a huge amount of liquor, and I could never communicate with the bartenders. So we would do it all through Google Translate or just pointing. Like sometimes they'd bring out different glasses for me to choose from, which then helped me understand like, okay, this is going to be like a martini.
What type of drink?
Yeah.
Cool.
And the other thing they always do is every time they mix a drink, which is an art in and of itself to just watch it. Like it's beautiful to watch. They're so precise. And, they always have, once they mix it all and they put it out in front of you, then they always put the bottles of liquor that they used out in front of you so you can see what it was, which I always thought was cool.
Oh, that's super cool because I'm always asking.
Yeah. And then they always serve some kind of like little tapa fruit or something with it. Yeah.
Okay. So your favorite one was in Tokachi?
Yes, in Obihiro, and it was called A Glass. And I went there. Yeah. And I went there 3 nights in a row.
Whoa.
And I became friends with the bartender. And it was so cute because he would reserve the space for me. Like he just reserved a bar space for me. And I'd come in and he'd be all happy and he'd have like all this stuff ready on Google Translate to tell me. Like it was awesome.
Like what? Do you remember?
Because he's like, I got some very special fruit for you to try today. I hope you like it, kind of thing, and it would be like an Asian pear and I don't know if you saw in the markets in Japan, that's the other thing is they have this weird kind of fruit culture that everything has to be super perfect and it's very expensive. So like grapes can be a little bundle of grapes, like this big can be like $30, but they're the most perfect grapes you've ever seen in your life. Yeah. Okay. Cantaloupe. Don't you remember like cantaloupe is a big thing in Hokkaido, and like a cantaloupe will cost you $20.
Oh, I do remember that was a big thing. I don't remember it being so expensive. Maybe I didn't see it in the right places though.
Well, you have to, it depends. Like in a regular grocery store, no. But like in all those little gift stores and like the train stations and stuff, like the fancy ones, there you get all the perfect fruit.
Perfect fruit.
It is. It is the most perfect fruit ever.
Perfect fruit and cocktails. Okay.
Yes, you would put them in my cocktails.
I would especially think from an ag state like Tokachi that you would get perfect fruit. So
yes.
I guess that makes sense.
It was
what was your cocktail called? Do you remember? Did it have a name? Oh, you wouldn't remember the name.
I have no idea because he would just make stuff up for me.
Like whiskey drinks, gin drinks, it didn't matter.
Yeah, so I would tell him, like, I would normally say, like, I'd like a gin or I'd like a whiskey cocktail. And normally, you know, maybe you'd say dry or sweet or something. And then he'd just basically start giving me things to choose from and would come up with something.
Fun.
Yeah.
It's an adventure in itself. I love that you do that. That's cool.
Well, Japan is the place to do it because it's very safe.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was fun. That area is really special. And it's a different side of Japan that most people would never, ever see, like just the agricultural side and these smaller villages, et cetera. So it was really cool.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. And the last place, we'll quick go there maybe.
I think we don't have a lot of time, but maybe you could do it quickly. And then because I also want to ask you, like, if you have any general tips for travel in Japan, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. So the last place I went was Shikoku, which is another island, but it's south. And I want to say it might be like the third largest island. But I went there because for years I had heard about another pilgrimage trail that was famous, but still it was kind of in the background of the Kumano Kodo, but it's called the Shikoku 88 Temples. And it is trying to think how long, 750 miles.
Oh, wow.
So another really long
around.
No, they don't. It's amazing. Once again, you can do portions, but it connects all these temples and you actually visit 88 temples. And that's the whole thing. That's the point, is you visit all these temples around the island. Some in urban areas, some in very remote, woods and stuff. The temples are all really beautiful and different. Each one is a little different. This comes out of there's a very famous monk that went and did this. His name is Monk Kukai, and it's this particular sect of the Buddhist religion, but he walked it like 1200 years ago. And that's how it kind of became this pilgrimage. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because most locals, like Japanese, I should say, most Japanese people who do this will do it by car. So you can actually, there are ways that you can just drive to each temple. But there is an actual trail separate from what the cars do, obviously. There's an actual trail that also connects them all. And it's normally the foreign tourists who do that, which I find really interesting. And it'll take, once again, 1 to 2 months, depending on how fast you are. Yeah. And it is very well marked. I will say that. Super marked, like not a problem. You could easily do this one yourself. And it's better established. Obviously, the other trail is brand new. So this is quite established, which means there's a lot of guest houses that are available to stay in. You can also camp, I believe. But there's a lot of resources along the way for the most part. And I went and obviously couldn't do the whole thing. I was only there for like 5 days. So we did kind of some best of temples and some of the really nice remote hikes, which I loved. And then we also did other stuff on Shikoku. We went to an area that is considered the third most, which is weird, the third most remote area in Japan. I'm like, really? I don't know. Okay. The third most remote area in Japan is the Iya Valley. And the Iya Valley is, wow, it was just, it's like this super deep and steep river gorge. Oh, wow. Probably one of the steepest I've ever seen. It reminded me of the Tiger Leaping Gorge in China because I hiked that years ago. But it was really amazing. And there is not one single straight road in that whole area. It is a motion sickness person's nightmare, actually. But it's a really interesting area. There's a lot of history there around the samurai. That's kind of where the samurai started. And why? Because it was a very remote area and hard to get to them, so people could hide out there. It's more in the center of Shikoku. And just a really interesting place. It also reminded me of Nepal, like all this terraced farming. Yeah. So that was a really, really beautiful area. We even went to an onsen there that was like way down in a river gorge that we had to ride this little, like, I don't know what you'd call it, the trains that go down the really steep grades.
A funicular.
Thank you. We had to ride a funicular down to the onsen, which was along the river. So like, it's a really beautiful area. Also somewhat agricultural, very small little villages, beautiful hiking. Yeah. And they had vine bridges that went across the gorge that were terrifying, that would never work in the United States.
Okay. So aside from the bridges and the motion sickness, it sounds absolutely dreamy.
Yeah.
Oh, really though? Like
I love that kind of stuff though. So, I mean, it was a really special area, and it's interesting because I keep on hearing a little bit more about it. We were there right before the fall colors hit, but that area would be incredible in the fall because there's so many trees and the river gorge is so pretty. So we did that, and we did some other visits of little towns around Shikoku and temples, and took some cooking classes and stuff like that. So we kind of got the best of Shikoku Island with a couple of days of hiking on the 88 Temple Trail, and then some other things that we did that were very, very cultural, like learning how to dye indigo. That was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
there's so much in Japan. I mean, considering that it runs the entire length of the same length of our East Coast, right?
Yes. Right.
It's so vast because in the north you have like Arctic, and in the south you have tropic. Okinawa is tropical. And yeah, it's just, there's something there absolutely for everybody, no matter what you're looking for.
Yeah.
There's absolutely something for everyone.
I find one of the things I really love about it, and I really encountered this in every one of these communities I went to, is there is a admiration for like art and culture that is really great. And so like meeting this guy who is dyeing indigo from natural plants for his whole life, to make this fabric and so on, that kind of stuff is all over. Like they have all kinds of artisans and stuff like that all over in these towns that are doing things by hand that we would just be like, what? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
One of the things I say that I love about traveling to Japan also is, in a weird way, it makes me understand my own culture so much better. It shines a spotlight on my culture because it's so different. This is a very developed country, super developed, and yet it operates so differently than the United States or North America, or even Europe. One of the things that I always realize very quickly is that I'm like, holy shit, I come from this capitalistic culture, and it's so ingrained in me in ways that I don't even know. And I realize that when I'm in Japan, even though they're a capitalist society, they do it very differently.
Yeah. I think I felt that too.
Yeah.
I
can't tell you how many times I sat there and thought like, oh my God, if they would just do it this way, they could make tons of money, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, Sherry, no.
Yeah. It's just different. Yeah.
They're not the most efficient. Even though we think of them as very efficient, they're very highly technological, but that doesn't necessarily make them efficient from a capitalistic standpoint. So I find that all really fascinating. Once again,
I guess it comes down to priority, how you're building it. And
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We're just about out of time. So do you have like 1, 2 top tips if somebody's going to go to Japan? What would you say to them?
Take advantage of luggage transfers. It's something that's done all over the country, and it is freaking amazing and cheap. So when I went to Shikoku, I didn't need all of my stuff that I had for a month. Instead, I took a different suitcase or bag, and I shipped that. I had a luggage transfer, and they moved it to the airport. And then when I was in Shikoku, I just had the things I needed. And then when I came back to fly out, my bag was already there at the airport. My other bag, and I'm saying it's like $15 to do that. and it's
amazing.
safe,
and efficient.
totally safe and efficient. That one is a good one where I'm just like, oh my God, I wish everywhere else had this. And you can do that. Like I did that on the Michinoku Trail. I would move stuff ahead a couple of days. You can do it everywhere. In every little corner, they've got luggage transfer. It is just a process they have, and it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. So that's one. The other big thing I would say is, to really enjoy Japan, you need to be okay to be naked. And you know what I mean by that, right? Like,
Yep. So, I think we were naked together once, actually. In Austin. We were talking about Finland.
Yeah. Well, that's right.
That's right. We were. No, you get naked with your friends. That's true.
Yeah. I mean, same sex. But yeah, to really enjoy the onsen, there is a whole culture and ritual around that you need to respect. And that also is really fascinating to me. And what I think, this is the whole thing with Japan for me, is like, it's so different because they're a super conservative country, like very conservative. I always say like you walk around Tokyo or anywhere and all the women are wearing like these long skirts. It looks like Little House on the Prairie to me, like super conservative. And then on the other hand, you go into an onsen and everyone's naked. And I'm just kind of like, that seems weird. Like that doesn't add up, but it does because it's Japan.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And don't miss the public onsens either. Because it wasn't until the end, like my entire trip, we had actually private ones the whole time. And so it wasn't until you and I did that biking day in Hokkaido that I even learned the whole ritual of it. And there's a whole ritual like that you need to kind of wash yourself first. And you have your little, you have the little long, skinny rectangular towel, and you have to know what to do with that. And wear the right slippers. Not the ones for outside the room, but the ones for inside the room.
All the slippers. Which actually is going to bring up another tip I have. Make sure that you bring a pair of shoes with you that is easy to slip on and off, because you will constantly be taking off your shoes and putting on slippers and doing that. I mean, you don't want tie shoes if you can handle it. Slippers. They provide pajamas at every hotel. You don't need to pack pajamas. You really don't even need to pack
a robe
or anything, because they have all of your toiletries there at every hotel, which is really weird, right? Like they have a toothbrush at every hotel.
They do.
Yeah. So you can actually get away with packing quite light. You don't need extra shoes because you wear the slippers inside. You've got the yukata, the robe that you wear inside the hotels. You've got pajamas that they give you every night. It's just, so you can go really light.
Those are really good tips. And I would add to that, be prepared to be on one of the biggest food adventures of your life.
Yay.
She just smiles and laughs. Yeah. It is for the adventurous eaters. And if you are not an adventurous eater, you might suffer. So just be prepared. It's very, very different there.
I want to be clear though, because the adventure is that you're not going to know what you're eating. It's not necessarily that you're eating like some weird, like, bug or heart, or like some, or a chicken foot.
Scorpions or tarantulas.
It's not that. It's not that kind of adventurous eating. Like I'm sure there's maybe a little bit of that, but what you have to be okay of is like looking at something and going, I have no idea what this is. And then you just dig in and eat. Like you're like, okay, let's try it.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I love.
Okay. Sherry, rock star.
Oh, this was so fun.
Yes, always. You knocked out of the park again. I mean, I don't think most of these people have probably heard of those 3 places that we got to talk about today. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Again, you can find Sherry at ottsworld.com. That's OTTS world.com, or at ottsworld on social media. If you want to say hi to me, please do. You can find me at Traveling Jackie on Instagram, and as always, at travelingjackie.com. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing some more time with you again soon.